Ahojte, vítajte pri tomto videu. Práve tu ležím pri mojich zemiakoch, ktoré som zasadila a snažím sa tváriť, že mi práve nepichá milión mečov do spodnej časti môjho tela, keďže mi dneska prišli krámy o pár dní skôr ako malý Jupi. Toto ideálne upršané počasie je veľmi úžasné na podcast, veľmi odporúčam. Wow, proste absolútne dneska nedokážem točiť. Jesus.
Much later.
Keďže každú epizódu začíname tým, že sa tak trošku porozprávame o niečom, čo sa nám v poslednom čase stalo, o nejakých nových informáciách, zaujímavých veciach, čo sme sa buď naučili, alebo aj niekedy zábavných blbostiach, ktoré sa nám stali. Tentokrát sme rozoberali ženskú obriezku. A to práve preto, lebo som Michaelovi prednedávnom ukázala jeden z mojich najobľúbenejších filmov, The Desert Flower, ktorý sa práve tejto téme venuje. Čiže ak vás zaujíma táto téma ženskej obriezky alebo téma jazyky, tak si určite vypočujte tretiu časť nášho podcastu a budeme tam mať aj špeciálneho hostia. Welcome to the third episode of our A Couple to Go podcast. Today's episode is going to be about languages, about being bilingual, multilingual, about having one brain and multiple personalities.
Oh yeah. Alright, so we have a pretty interesting topic we think today, and it's something that really influenced us generally, even in our relationships, something that we talk about quite a bit, just because we come from different places and our mother languages are quite different, so it's a topic that's very personal to us as well.
You said it in every episode. In every episode, you're like, blah, 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 this topic is so personal to us. That's why we talk about it. Of course, that's why we talk about it. Why else would we make this podcast?
Okay, I'm gonna stop. Not. Alright, so how do you want to go about this today?
Well, okay, kind of like with all the other episodes before, I would like to start with something that's a bit off topic, but kind of relates to something we did before. So our last episode was about modeling and traveling as a model, and yesterday I showed Michael one of my favorite movies. One movie that I haven't seen in a very long time, and surprisingly, even after rewatching it now, it touched me again really deeply.
Yeah, it's really emotional and really touching.
Yeah, and that movie relates to, yes, also the modeling world. So that's why I tried to make this bridge, between the last episode and this episode.
Bridge is gonna be the new start.
The movie is called Desert Flower, and it's about the life of Varys Diary, or Deary, or I'm not sure if I pronounce her last name right. Sorry if
Probably not.
Yes, probably not. She's a model from Somalia, but she became world famous, and not only for modeling, but later in her life also for speaking about an issue that's still very problematic in many places of the world. And that's female genital mutilation.
Pom pom pom.
Oh, that's not the topic to make jokes about now.
No, it is absolutely terrifying what happens to these young girls in some countries. Even if now countries are starting more and more to ban it, it's still happening, and it's still happening even in civilized, quote unquote, country like the United States. And it's a practice that's absolutely disgusting. Do you want to describe a little bit what it is?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. That people might not even know what we are talking about. So female genital mutilation, or how it was called before, female circumcision, but they changed the terminology because people would compare it to male circumcision, and that's a completely different story.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely zero comparison between both. It's day and night.
Exactly. So there are different stages in which you can do it, but the most extreme and the one that also Varys experienced was the one where girls, when they are young, around the age of 3, 5, 8, young, before they start menstruating.
Depending when they can find the person to do the operation on the kid. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying in the movie.
Yeah, but that depends on countries. In more developed countries, I guess, you can find a doctor earlier. Yeah. But okay, we're getting off topic. So what happens is that these young girls, the doctors or the people performing this circumcision, this cut, surgery, yeah, this butchery, they cut away their clitoris, they cut away their inner vulva lips, and sometimes they even cut away parts from the outer lips, and then they sew all of that together and leave just a tiny little hole so pee-pee and later menstrual blood can come through. So they basically cut off all the genitalia, all the female genital parts, everything that could bring some pleasure, everything that, okay, I'm not saying that this makes you a woman, but everything womanly on that woman.
I mean, pretty much everything about the genitalia.
Everything sexually, womanly, everything that genitals.
Yeah, or everything that's, well, not everything that's related to pleasure, but the outside portion of what's related to pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Like the clitoris, that's something also researchers discovered very late, because the research in female genitals and female sexuality, basically everything besides male, like cis male sexuality, also LGBTQ, etc., is still very
unstudied.
Unstudied. Yeah.
Let's just say there hasn't been as much studies as there was on the male counterpart.
Not really. Also, like intersexual people are also really not studied much on, etc. Yeah, so the clitoris, it's not just this little ball, but it has also an inner structure. So the inner structure, they don't cut away, but also because they probably don't know even about the fact that there is an inner structure.
Thankfully.
But still the main pleasure point is cut away.
Yeah, that is the real point, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that they sew together the vaginal opening is supposed to be because it prevents the possibility of somebody having sex with that woman.
Before she gets married.
Exactly. So this way, they kind of ensure that the woman will first not feel pleasure, and second, will stay a virgin until she gets married. And then in the night of marriage, the husband takes scissors or a knife and cuts her open and then has sex with her.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
And this practice is something that is still happening in the world, even though Varys first spoke up about this problem, and it became a global issue that like several countries started to discussing about. And like it was first talked about in the 1990s. And 30 years later, we are still having this issue. Even though, yes, we have to acknowledge that a lot of countries started after it became global and everybody started talking about it. Countries are started to ban this practice in their environment, like within their country.
Yeah, within their countries.
Yeah, but there are still countries that have this practice ongoing, and there are still people doing it also illegally. I kind of came across the movie again because I saw the news that Sudan, they abolished this practice, like now. In 2020, like 30 years later. And
nice. About time.
About time, but also good news, because these practices are also heavily rooted in the culture and are many times also very religious, and as we all know, it's very hard to change religious and cultural practices.
Really hard to change. True indeed.
Okay, yeah, so that was the movie that we watched yesterday. I wanted to ask you something.
Yes.
After the movie, I saw that you were really touched.
Of course.
And also with all the scenes that were more dramatic, I would say. You stared at the screen and couldn't look away. What are your thoughts about the movie?
I think the movie is absolutely fantastic. The portrayal of the issue is yes, it's dramatic, but it also does a really good job at showing the evolution of someone that was birthed in like the most away possible environment. Like the main character she's born into a nomadic tribe in Somalia. So when she eventually managed to escape and get to,
because she escapes when she learns that she has to marry.
Yeah.
And when they find a husband for her, like as soon as she starts menstruating, they find a husband for her, and she is supposed to become his fourth wife, and she's like, no. She's
about like 13, 14 years old, like at this point, so super young. So she runs away, and she, through various encounters, she manages to get to London. And it's interesting because once she's in London, she kind of we don't see that until further in the movie, but there's a lot of years that passes where she's not really in contact with the culture in London. So she something happens and she gets out of where she is, and then she's in the middle of London. She's been there for a while, but she has no idea what's going on. She doesn't speak the language, and then she's kind of going around making a way in it. And just the evolution of the character, just aside from the whole issue, of course the whole issue is the main, like, it's one of the main problematic of the movie, and it's what kind of pushes the character into the direction that she's going at the end of the movie. But the whole evolution of the character through who she was and who she becomes, and the way all of this happens, and like the strength that she must have had to go through all of these things and become the person that she was at the end of the movie, or I'm guessing in life, because it's based on a true story, is absolutely incredible. And it puts in perspective what we think living a hard life is. Because trust me, compared to that kind of living, a lot of us have it really, really good.
We do, yeah. We kind of like, at some point in the movie, we looked at each other with Michael and we were like, yeah, fuck, like our life is so easy compared to the lives of some
we have nothing
people
to complain about.
I have a deep respect for Varys. Like, she is an amazing woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything she accomplished, regardless of her upbringing, it just shows that with the proper determination and the proper will and maybe a little bit of luck, you can really make a difference in the world.
And the interesting part in the movie was also that the biggest changes, the positive changes that started happening for her, started happening after she finally started to learn English. And that's what can bring us to today's topic, that learning a new language can sometimes really change your life.
Oh yeah.
And not only sometimes, but it does change your life. It affects you in many ways.
In more ways that you might think.
And not just from a perspective of, yeah, okay, I know a second language, I can talk to French people now too, besides English people or something.
Yeah.
But it affects your personality. It affects also how people see you. Yeah, so Michael is bilingual.
Yep.
He speaks French and English.
Yes, ma'am.
And French is your native language, right?
Yep, it is.
English is your second language that you learned in school.
Yeah, I started learning it in third year of elementary school or third year of primary school, depending on how you call it. Do you remember how old you are when you start?
Yeah, I was also in the third grade, because in Germany we learn it later.
How old are you in third grade?
Oh my god, I don't know. Wait, first grade is what? First grade is 6 years. Then 6, 7, 8.
Okay. So
I was 7 because I was 7 because I started school at 5.
What a smart ass.
What a smart ass.
Smarty pants. So yeah, I basically started learning English in third grade, and I was pretty lucky, I guess, into my interest, because as far as I remember, in my class at that time, I was the only one that was really interested in the subject or interested in learning English. I come from a smaller village, not village, but town, where most people that speak French don't really have an interest into learning English, because they most likely won't be that much in contact with the language.
When I was in Michael's birthplace and I met some of his friends from childhood, their English was so bad. Oh my god. And not just their English, but their whole understanding of the world outside of their space where they were living.
Oh, that's a smaller town or small village. Well, not because my hometown's not a small village, like in any sense of the word. It's pretty big.
Not small like small village in Slovakia where 1,000 people live, but small for Canada. So how many people live in Sherbrooke?
There's like 700,000.
Yeah, 7.
Oh, no. Wait.
What?
No, 300, I think. 350. I don't know.
See, 300,000 people is little for you. You know how much Bratislava has? The capital of Slovakia?
I think it's 800?
500,000.
500,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Are you sure that it's 300,000?
I'll double check in a second. But yeah, so English wasn't very something that most people would look into learning or add a lot of focus in. They kind of saw it as something that was not very useful at the time.
Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, a lot of people think that, because Michael's from Canada, and a lot of people think that Canada is French and English, so that all people speak both French and English. But there is just one part in Canada that speaks French, and the rest of Canada speaks English. And the English people mostly don't speak French, and the French people mostly don't speak English.
Yeah, like unless you're in a bigger And in bigger city, especially Montreal. Montreal is probably the main hub where English and French kind of lives together.
Yeah, Montreal's the capital of Quebec, the province where you speak French. So yeah, in the big cities, they speak both languages or speak more English.
More in Montreal. Like if you go to Toronto or Vancouver, there's more chances that the second main language is going to be Chinese.
Because they have a big Asian population.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But most of the French speaking you're going to hear, especially in Quebec.
Anyway, go back to your point. I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify for people that don't understand.
Yeah, no, I understand. And then, mostly learned English through school. But to be honest, I don't think it would have been enough to bring me where I am currently with my English. And not because I didn't take advanced English classes or anything, but just because I believe that when you learn a language, if you want to be really fluent in that language, a big part of being perfecting that language is to speak it a lot or to use it a lot.
For sure.
Yeah. When you need to use a language a lot to kind of have it very fluent in your mind or in your everyday life. And for me, what really allowed me to practice it more was playing video games. And it's always funny when I tell that to people. There's a lot of disbelief around it, especially when I tell it to older people that didn't really experience that kind of environment where you're playing video games and you get to talk and chat with other people from around the globe.
Honey, when you tell it to me, even though I know this, every time you tell it to me, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I believe you, but I still kind of think, I believe you, and I think you can learn a lot through video games. But I still kind of believe that movies are better for learning.
No, I don't think so. Because movies you hear. When you play video games with someone and you speak with someone, you actually interact with someone.
I don't mean just watching movies and not doing anything else, but watching movies in the combination of interacting with English-speaking people. Movies are great. The way I watched movies to help me learn languages was, when I wanted to improve my English, I would watch movies in English and then put English subtitles so I can see the words how they are written also.
Yeah, but how about when I play video games and I'm talking for 4 hours with someone from America who speaks only English or someone from Canada that speaks English? It's not just listening to English and understanding and developing my understanding of the language, but it's also me actively speaking and creating those connections of speaking and coming up with words and developing my own fluency in the language.
Okay, but don't you usually just speak about the same things? A movie can go in different direction and all the movies are different and stuff, so you will hear new words more often.
Well, it depends on the scenario. I remember back in the days I would play a very popular MMORPG, and there was some times where we didn't do anything in game. We would just chat. So I remember just hanging out on a voice chat. And it's basically like having a Zoom conversation that you could compare to that nowadays. A Zoom conversation without the image and just talking about life.
Okay, I can't compare because yesterday, or when was it yesterday, was the first time I used Zoom.
For anyone out there that used Zoom, or if you don't know what Zoom is a kind of a Skype, but for video, and people use it for work conferences and stuff right now.
I don't know how people described it to me, is that Zoom is Skype, but better.
That's fair, because Skype is pretty... anyway, we're not going to get into this. For me, what I felt, what really brought me my English level up was interacting with people, either through video games, and also my first relationship. My girlfriend at the time was Anglophone, and it really pushed me to practice and speak my English in topics that I did not approach before, because when it was my first girlfriend, so everything romantic, everything drama related to relationship and stuff like that.
Okay, so Michael learned romance talk English through his ex, and okay, I don't know how to call the English that you play during video games, but...
Normal English. We talked about anything.
Okay, no, I understand what you mean. I understand. I'm just, at this point, I'm just joking.
Yeah, you're making fun of me.
A little bit. But okay. Just, the average person, when you tell them that, oh yeah, I learned speaking English through video games, they will look at you weird.
Yeah, it's out of context. It sounds a bit silly, but...
Because, what people imagine is that, okay, what do you tell the people that you're talking to during the video games? Okay, go, run, jump, no, hide. So, that's why I imagine when you say, I learned English through video games.
Yeah, but I actually made some real friends through video games, and when you just have friends online, sometimes you just chat, and I don't know, just chatting helps immensely with
okay, before Michael goes into a spiral of why video games are amazing and blah blah.
Don't get me started.
Let's continue with languages. Okay, so this type of learning another language, now we're going to talk about bilingualism.
Yeah.
But there's also multilingualism where, bilingualism is when you are fluent in 2 languages. Multilingualism is when you speak more than that. Okay, so there are 3 main types of bilingualism.
Tell me about it.
And it's the compound bilingual. It's a bit hard for me because I'm actually a multilingual person. I speak 5 languages.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of okay, but so the compound bilingual, that would be me with German. From Slovakia as a 2-year-old moving to Germany and then growing up in Germany and learning German as a kid.
Yeah, you basically learned 2 different languages at the same time.
Exactly.
As a toddler to a certain age. Learning a second language, whenever you're under 12 and you're learning a second language or a third language, that's when it's considered the compound phase.
No. Okay. Let me explain. I have actually a really good definition for it. So, a compound bilingual is an individual who learns 2 languages in the same environment that she acquires with one notion in 2 verbal expressions. So, as a child, you'll grow up in the same environment of, you hear that language, those 2 languages everywhere, kind of and you just learn in your head. They're in one box. This is the one box just for languages. And then you differentiate that, okay, this, for example, let's say the sun has 2 names for you. It's not like the sun in French and the sun in English, but it's the sun and it has 2 names.
Oh, really? That's really cool. I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah. And okay, then there is the second category. Coordinate bilingual acquires 2 languages in different context. So, for example, at home and at school. So the words of the 2 languages belong to separate and independent systems.
That would be me.
That would be you or me with French, because I went to bilingual...
or you with English as well.
Yeah, with English too, actually. Yeah. True. That's with me with French and English. Because I learned it at school and then later in life. But first I started learning these languages at school, and at home I would speak German and Slovak.
Yeah.
And then the third category is a subcoordinate bilingual, one where one language dominates. And those are mostly older people who learn the languages later in life and have people that kind of may have trouble learning the languages. It doesn't mean that subcoordinate bilinguals speak the language necessarily worse, but they don't create these systems in their head, but they constantly translate one language to another in their heads. So they would see the sun, and let's say their native English, the native language is English, so they would see the sun, they would think sun, but then they wanna say it in, I don't know, French, and then they would say
soleil.
Soleil, exactly. But they have to translate in their head all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what you and me, we don't do that with English, for example, anymore. With It's
just fluent and kind of integrated at this point. And the big difference that this all creates is that when you think of a language, if you learned it early enough in your life, or if you've been integrating the language for a long time, your view of the language and everything that's around it is more holistic. You can understand more subtleties, more emotional subtleties and cultural subtleties better, because you've been integrating everything about that language into your brain for longer. As if you're coming from the outside, when you're older and you're trying to learn the language, since your entire language spectrum is already formed, it's harder to understand those the subtleties of emotional.
You can understand the sentence, for example, as an English-speaking person in French, or somebody says something in French and you understand what he means, but you kind of don't understand the whole emotion behind it, or the little things, the things in tonnage and intonation, things in intonation and
it's
stuff.
a more analytical view, I guess. And obviously this is not the case for everyone. There's exceptions, or if you practice it enough, I guess, or at some point you might be able to start integrating it more.
But yeah, there is a scientific evidence that compound bilinguals, those who, usually people who grow up learning 2 languages, have a more emotional connection to the other language than the coordinate bilinguals that form a more logical connection to the language. this is something interesting because it's not really scientifically proven yet. There is a lot of research to be done, but there's a theory that that's also why children have an easier time to learn a second language, because they kind of learn through emotions and stuff. Plus, a child has a formable brain.
Yeah.
And we have two
Call this plasticity.
Exactly, a more plastic brain. And we have in our brain two hemispheres, where one hemisphere, it's not like it's half and half divided, but one hemisphere dominates with logical thinking, like there's more logical thinking happening there, and the other hemisphere is more emotionally oriented. You call that logical intelligence and emotional intelligence.
Yes, ma'am.
And with adults, those two hemispheres are more separated. When for children, those hemispheres are more combined, like their brain is just like a big mush, kind of.
I like how I'm the one with the degree in psychology and you're the one explaining the brain.
True. Okay, but yeah, you have a degree in psychology, but I'm also very interested in biology, so...
Fair enough.
Okay, and yeah, so because children are more able to connect like logical things with emotions when it comes to languages, and because those two hemispheres are more connected, they are basically capable to use their whole brain to learn the language, where to adults would use like one half and a little bit from the other half.
Basically, they're able to use more brain power.
Yeah, that's why it's easier for them. And also, it's an interesting proven fact that memory works better when we combine those memories with emotions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's definitely true. It's been proven and proven again, and we see it very easily in trauma cases and stuff like that.
Yeah. That when you have a memory, something happens to you, and you will more probably remember how that event made you feel than what actually happened. Because our brain is it tricks us in a way that a lot of our memories didn't happen 100% how we remember them. But the emotion that we felt, that's something that stays.
Oh, yeah. And it's vastly related to survivor's instinct as well. Your brain is basically ultra programmed to try and get you to survive. So whenever you experience something that makes you emotional, or whenever you experience something that brings fear or like various either positive or negative emotions, we obviously remember negative emotions better, but basically your brain is going to remember that. It's going to engrave what created that emotion, just so it knows how to avoid it better next time, so you don't feel all these negative emotions and you can survive better.
Yeah, there's this is such a complex topic, and there's new things that are being discovered every day. So this podcast is kind of gonna be like, it's 2020, so like take it with a grain of salt that there's always when we talk about science, there's always so much more research to be done and everything.
And also, we're not entirely specialists, so obviously we do our researches, but don't be afraid to go out and do the research on your own and learn more about these things, because I think that we the subjects that we touch are usually like pretty interesting, but they're also pretty, we don't go really deep into them.
We try to do like research as best as we can. We always try to go from sources that are credible, exactly. And even when you watch a video, like I make sure that it's from a credible source, that it's like a science channel that links all the resources and like the articles, the studies, etc. So like I make sure that I'm not talking complete bullshit here, and I'm not like, oh yeah, this is what I think, but I sell it as my universal truth.
Yeah, because if there's something that we dislike, is to talk through our hat. I love that expression.
Through your head or what?
Through your hat, like.
Huh? What does that mean? Okay, explain.
Basically means you talk something that you don't know. Like when you talk about something that you don't know about, or something that you're not sure, but you make it your truth.
Okay, wow, I've never heard this expression. See, this is something that Michael was speaking English and has been speaking English in his life for way longer. He's older than me. So since you learned it at school, and then you moved to Montreal where people speak more English, like you are way more fluent in English than I am.
A little bit.
So like I don't know many of these expressions and those like little cultural things that I just don't know.
You're getting smooth though. I personally see an improvement since we started dating, so congratulations.
And I see an improvement actually too, which brings me to a fun fact that I wanted to share with you.
Tell me.
Okay, baby.
Yes.
Do you remember Venice?
Of course I remember Venice.
So Venice, for those of you who know the show The Bachelor,
Oh no.
that's the best comparison. Like, honestly. Come on.
Okay, break it.
Okay, so in The Bachelor, they go on something called dream dates, which is like a date, but it's so much better. It's kind of like once in a lifetime experience, and maybe people who know How I Met Your Mother, you kind of can compare it to the super date that who organized it, Ted or Barney or
Well,
something.
it depends. The one that was super fast or the one that was...
No, I know. Ted organized it, but Barney then went on that super date with Nora.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Oh my god, I think I spoiled something from How I Met Your Mother.
No, it's fine. It's not absolutely relevant to the story.
Yeah, okay. Oh god, people are gonna hate me. I hate people who say
That's not
spoilers.
it. That's not even a spoiler. It's not like if you revealed someone that died or something.
Okay, no, yeah, okay. But I am the person that hates even the smallest spoiler. Like, I am the person that's often, if I want to see a movie, I will not watch the trailer because I don't want to have any spoilers. I don't want to know anything about the movie. Only if it's good, bad, or like kinda what it's about.
And funny enough, the amount of times that we're watching something and then she's like, oh, I need to know that thing about the actor or whatever, anything. And then she's just going to go online, like type in her question, and then she's going to be like, fuck, I just spoiled myself. Every time. It's kind of a funny thing.
But I think I also overreact. It's not usually things that I look up about actors. It's something about the movie. Like, I don't know. You find ways
to spoil yourself.
You know, Game of Thrones for me, that was the horror. When Game of Thrones was popular and like when it was like the most popular and the new seasons would come out, you know how hard it was for me to avoid spoilers? For me, that like every little fucking thing is a spoiler for me.
You just don't look at Instagram and don't look at Facebook.
No. You don't open the internet like at all. Like, internet doesn't exist for you.
No.
Until you have seen the new Game of Thrones episode.
You just open your webpage, you wait till it exactly where the episode's gonna be, you wait till it's released, and then you refresh the page and you press play.
Okay, but in Venice, we had this amazing date where we spent one night in Venice, like 2 days, and that night we kind of like talked most of the night.
Yes.
And we had some wine.
Definitely vino.
And I noticed that I suddenly was able to speak better English with you.
Oh, that's where you're going with this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, yes. Yes, I know exactly the feeling. I've had that experience a lot of times in my life.
So, it is scientifically proven now that drinking alcohol actually improves your language skills.
Damn.
But before you start running to the fridge and taking out some beer or like grabbing a bottle of wine and then drinking that while studying, I'm apologizing. We had to make an unexpected break, but now we are back and continuing with my thought. So drinking a bit of alcohol improves your ability to speak a foreign language, another language.
And how does that happen?
So it has nothing to do with memory. Like, drinking while learning will not make you learn better. Like, it has nothing to do with memory. It will actually, drinking when you learn will make your memory worse.
Yep, drinking and memory, no bueno.
But a certain level of alcohol, like a little bit, I mean, not talking about being drunk, but a little bit of alcohol helps you lower your stress level and makes you kind of more at ease, and you don't constantly think, okay, I'm gonna make this mistake when I speak the language, I'm gonna make this mistake, and you just speak.
Basically lowers your inhibition and puts away, like, the amount of people that are trying to speak a language that they're speaking for, like, not relatively fluently, and are like, oh, I'm nervous to speak because I don't know what people are gonna judge me, or because I'm not so good at that language. Well, when you have a few drinks, let me tell you that those thoughts go out the window real fast.
We don't want to encourage you to drinking. No, not at all. Please be over 18, or for the States over 21.
Or for wherever you live.
Or for wherever you live, like legal drinking age in mind. But this is an interesting fun fact that scientists in Netherlands found out. It's something that people have been kind of observing for a while, but now we have a real scientific proof for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I know I'm not crazy now.
It's just funny because I really felt this when we were in Vienna, and I was kind of like
In Vienna?
Oh, fuck. In Venice. Because that was at the beginning of our relationship. And yes, I would agree that my English improved so much since we started dating.
Mm-hmm.
And that was at the beginning. And I was also so nervous to just embarrass myself in front of you.
Aww.
Like not being able to speak English that good.
Cute.
I mean, obviously my English was...
No, it was good.
Good. It wasn't bad, but I'm also a big perfectionist. So I'm gonna find flaws and things where there are no flaws and make myself crazy over it for no reason.
No, really?
Oh, God. I feel like I already said in this podcast that I'm a perfectionist.
I think it's going to come back pretty often.
A lot
too.
of times. Because, that's my excuse for everything. If something happens, if something is not going my own way, if I'm like stressing over something too much, I'm just like, bitch, please, I'm a perfectionist.
That's
why.
It to be perfect, okay. So what's the relation between the Bachelor and that story?
Sorry, what?
What's the relation between Bachelor?
Oh, Bachelor, the show. Yeah, it's just that the dream date, like the date we had, was kind of like the dream dates of Bachelor.
Oh, okay.
Like this amazing date that I'm gonna probably never have in my life again. Like that was just
What
a
do you
movie
mean?
experience.
You don't think I can recreate that perfect date for you?
Well, yeah, but also, okay, this is gonna sound so bad again. There's just, okay, when two people start dating, when two people start dating, there's this kind of different chemistry and attraction between them. And we've been a couple for 2 years now? Almost 2 years or something like that. So...
Hey, when I wake up in the morning, baby, I look at you and I have butterflies.
Nah, okay.
Ouch.
No, okay, I still love you. Like, I love you.
I still love you.
No!
Oh, I'm having so much fun with this.
Hey, you're just teasing me.
Uh-huh.
Fuck you.
I love you too. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. There's something magical when you start dating and...
Because it's exciting. It's a new person.
Exactly.
You're getting to know a new person. Is like a whole different new experience.
Yeah,
and it's just a different kind of love. And we talked about this already in our first episode where we talked about past relationships. And Michael also brought up an article about different kinds of love.
Ooh.
So if you want to know more about that, go to listen to our first
podcast.
To listen to our first episode. But finish this one first, please.
Yes. More interesting stuff to come.
This podcast is called One Brain, Multiple Personalities. And it's not only supposed to be a catchy title, but I also want to talk about how knowing a different language affects you personality-wise.
Yes.
Do you have some specific experiences with this?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I speak 2 languages, right? French and English. And I do believe that when I speak English or when I'm in a context where I'm using more of my English, I have a different persona, a different kind of personality that when I use my French. And I believe that this is anchored in the fact that I mostly use my French, like I learned French growing up. And when I was growing up, I wasn't the most comfortable person. Like I had self-esteem issues, and I come from a town that is very, I would say, douchebaggy in the sense that what's kind of looked at for a guy is to be more muscular and kind of more of a jock. And obviously, I do not fit that description. I'm not muscular. Or I'm not a jock at all.
Michael is a big Italian spaghetti.
Yes, spaghetti.
That means he's skinny.
So not fitting into that kind of ideal. I had self-esteem issues, and I didn't think I was like, good looking or super handsome or whatever.
Baby, you are good looking.
Whatever.
And fuck that, you're a model, so just middle finger in their face.
That happened later. Anyway, so growing up with
not saying that only models are good looking people. That's not where I wanted to go with this.
Everyone's beautiful. Growing up with my French was basically me being insecure with myself, and then the part of my life where I started really speaking more in English and using more of my English is when I moved to Montreal, and that just happened at the same time as I became a model, and I started kind of going out of my bubble, experiencing these new things like, parties or just jobs with photographers, and interacting more with people in English in an environment where I had to be more confident, and in an environment that was also making me feel more confident, So I think in general, the way my English evolved starting from there was in a point in my life where I felt more comfortable with who I am and who I accepted more who I am, and that I think that reflects itself in the way I interact when I'm in an English environment, I guess, or when I'm using my English persona.
I feel like when you speak English, you are more outgoing in the way you speak. Like, you will make bigger differences between, like, okay, louder, quieter, and blah, blah, blah. You sound more like an extrovert when you speak English than when you speak French.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Also, I've always said that I personally enjoy speaking in English more than I enjoy French, even if French is my first language. I don't know why.
Everybody hates French.
Yeah, well, in French we have a saying that French is a bitch,
It's not like, okay, people think that French is such a beautiful language. It's so beautiful sounding, magnificent, like a melody to your ears. But it's so fucking hard to learn, eh?
Yeah, honestly, if you don't learn it as one of your first languages in life, I don't even know how someone can learn French well. It's so difficult. There's so many exceptions. There's I don't know. French is its own thing. And what about you? Do you feel like you have different personalities for the different languages you speak?
Oh, definitely. Oh, God, definitely. So, I said that I speak 5 languages.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of Slovak people will hate me for this now, but I count the Czech language as my 5th language, which I didn't do my whole life. Most of my life, I've never said that I speak 5 languages, or I've never counted Czech as another foreign language. But I started to do so since I moved away. I don't want to explain this now because we have a little interview with my sister later where we talk more deeply about the Czech language and why we see it in this weird ways, like why Slovak people perceive it as not a different language. But anyway, so that's why I'm not gonna talk about Czech now, because Czech for me, it is a bit connected to Slovak. So I'm gonna talk about just 4 languages because I see the biggest differences in those languages.
Those languages are?
Those languages are Slovak, German, French, and English. I'm from Slovakia, and with the Slovak language, I simply combine kind of like weird things of, on one hand, my family, because my whole family is from Slovakia, and not everybody speaks German, only my mom, dad, and my sister. When we moved to Germany, they learned German, and my sister was born there. So nobody of the rest of my family doesn't speak German. So I connect Slovak with family, and I connected with love. But at the same time, Slovak was also, I connected with kind of like, not shame, but shyness, and also with pain, because when I moved back from Germany to Slovakia, I had big trouble fitting in, where Slovak started out for me as being this loving language for family. Then it turned into the language that everybody else was speaking, but I had trouble.
Okay.
And I would be made fun of, etc.
How old were you when you moved back to Slovakia?
When I moved back to Slovakia, I was 8 at the verge of 9, so 9ish.
Okay.
I started school with 9 years old in Slovakia.
Okay.
Yeah, so during this time when I was in school in Slovakia, I changed a lot in personality. And up until this day, when I speak Slovak, I feel like I am kind of kinder, more polite, and I speak in a more nicer way. Okay. My voice is softer, and I feel kind of sounds more feminine. And when I lived in Germany, I was a kid in Germany. I was a kid with, not saying no rules, but a free-spirited child. A child that was exploring. I was a very extroverted kid. And for me, German is combined with this feeling of freedom and
so you're crazy
friendship.
And hippie.
No, but that kid-like feeling, this joy of life, that's German for me.
Okay.
And that's my personality in German too.
Oh.
And English, yes, I started to learn some English at school, but for the longest time we had really bad teachers. And me, I started learning English in Germany, where you start learning English very late, etc. So most of my English, the best, like, I learned not really in school, but while traveling and through modeling. So English for me is this independent language, this self-empowering language.
This strong woman, I do it myself language.
Yes, exactly. So in English, I would be more, I would say, sassier. I joke around more in English in a more ironic and sarcastic way than I do in Slovak.
Okay.
And I feel like I just talk louder in English and just kind of like, I feel like I'm more extroverted in English than I am in Slovak.
Okay.
It's kind of different when I talk to my sister, because that's also, we have such a close relationship that
The connection is different.
Yeah, that the language doesn't matter really. But I mean, when I talk to like regular people that I just have like normal connections with, like not such a strong connection like with my sister, for example. And French for me is the language that I learned in school, that I learned in high school. So French me is basically teenage high school Natalia.
Well,
a lot of insecurities.
Do you actually feel like you have like a developed French persona at this point? Because
I feel like I had one, but I feel like I lost it a bit. Because during the last like 5 years, I haven't been really using French anymore.
So you lost it a little bit?
I lost a lot of the language. Like a lot. Oh my god. I now when we would have a high school reunion and they would be like, oh yeah, it's talking French. I would be just like, oh my god, no. I would shit my pants.
So cute when she speaks in French.
I would shit my pants speaking French publicly. In front of you, I'm like, okay. But no, never. Oh no, God, no.
It's honestly the cutest thing when she speaks French.
Mais non.
Mais oui.
Mais non. All right. Yeah, so we talked about our personalities, and now we're gonna listen to a little interview with my sister,
Maximiliana MUCHOVA.
As I said, my sister Max was not only growing up in Germany, but she was born in Germany, and then later she moved back to Slovakia with us. Yeah, so she also grew up bilingual, maybe even more than me, because like she really, since she was born into this Germany, world, she spoke 2 languages. And now, currently, she is learning French at the same school where I went to, but not as in a bilingual way. Like, we had a bilingual section in our school, but she's going to like the normal section, and they have also French classes.
Okay. She's getting pretty good at it.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. But that's also because she's just using a lot of Duolingo, like language learning apps.
We do have a lot of tools nowadays.
Oh my god, she has like a 200-day streak on it.
Yikes, that beats my 3-day streak.
200 days in a row she was improving her French on that app.
That's absolutely amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and she said that it helped her so much in school. But
I believe her.
Yeah, okay. So let's listen to Max.
Let's go.
Hello, Max. Welcome to our podcast. How do you feel today?
Hi, and thank you for having me. Sorry for my bad English. It's really bad at this corona time, so sorry for that. And I'm happy that I can be a part of this awesome podcast. And so my name is Max. I'm 18 years old, and I'm Natalie's sister.
My lovely, amazing, beautiful sister that I wanted to do this podcast with in the first place, but then Michael came in my life and I moved to Canada, and
it's all my fault.
It's all Michael's fault. It's all Michael's fault.
It's my fault.
Yeah, then she left me.
Oh.
Whoa, Rose, hey!
And now I'm alone, sitting in her room, on her bed.
Okay, I'm starting to tear up. So let's start with our questions. Or I'm gonna
before this gets too emotional.
Okay, I'm gonna cry. Okay. So Maxi, we both lived in Germany. You were actually born in Germany. And
yep.
I have a question for you. Do you, as somebody that was born in Germany but is Slovak, like you don't have a German citizenship, do you feel like German is more of your mother language or Slovak is more of your mother language?
I think this is very difficult to answer because it really depends. The first years I've been living in Slovakia, I felt more German because it was too like fresh, the moving to Slovakia. And my German was way better at that time because I was talking German all the time in Germany, of course. So when I moved to Slovak, I definitely felt more German, but now I think that it changed, that I feel more Slovak, and my German is getting worse and worse, and my Slovak is getting way better. Like now I can say
that's the same with me.
It's easier for me to speak Slovak than German.
How long do you feel like it took before you started feeling more Slovak than German?
That's really hard. I don't know how many years I've been living in Slovakia actually. It's maybe like 13, 12? I don't know, but
yeah, something like that. It's more than it's more than we lived in Germany now.
Yeah, maybe after I got to high school, maybe I like kind of more accepted that I'm Slovak because I really wasn't happy about it. It's very hard to explain actually.
That's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just like, you were saying that it took you until high school, so that's pretty long because that means it took you like what, 9 years?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, maybe I'm telling bullshit. I don't know. It's really hard to say like from what moment. So yeah, I can't say. I don't know. I don't know. Really don't know.
Okay, and now if somebody would ask you, what is your mother language? What would you answer?
Slovak, definitely.
Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting for somebody that was born in Germany and probably German was closer to you.
Yeah, but because all my friends are Slovak now, and it's just like, all the people around me are Slovak, so it's a big part of me now.
Yeah, you've been diving into that culture for longer than you've been in the German ones at this point.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like I'm still not so connected to the Slovak traditions. Like, I don't know, some holidays or the food. I think that's the same, maybe, Natalie, I don't know. But, like, I hate Slovak food, the traditional food, I hate it.
I like some of the traditional food, but yeah, I know what you mean. The traditions that we celebrated in Germany, like Easter, for example, I can't deal with Slovak Easter, but Slovak Easter is also super weird. Slovak Easter basically consists of guys going to houses from girls, like from house to house, getting them out of the house, like a group of guys, pouring ice cold buckets of water on them, whipping them, and then the girls pay them with money, with beautiful like painted eggs, with food and with booze.
I think we could do an entire episode on Slovak Easter. It's a pretty weird thing.
It's kind of like
luckily for me, Easter is still like waking up and searching for some sweets, and then I have a lot of sweets and chocolates, and that's
the good thing about Easter. Sweets.
Yeah, German Easter is better. The Easter bunny is better.
Definitely better.
It's so nice to just wake up and have a bunch of sweets. That's so cool.
I'll take chocolate over whippings every day.
My mom, like our mom is still playing like she's the bunny and she's hiding things.
Yeah, I know. She still does that, even though we are adult. I love that. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I like it. I would be sad if she stopped doing it.
Yeah, right? Okay, let's move on to the second question we have for you. Do you feel like you're forgetting the languages you already know since you started learning French? Because Max, the same as I, is now going to a school where she's learning French.
Yeah. And also the answer is yes, because it's so hard to kind of remember all the languages or like stay on the same level with the language. You have to always keep practicing and like revising things, because like when I want to get better in French, I have to like spend a lot of time learning French, and then I have no time, for example, to get better in my German or like English. And
it's kind of like when you know a lot of languages, you know a lot of languages, but you don't know them at the same level all the time. So there's a period in my life when I know English better. There's a period in my life when I know French better, or when I knew French better. Now my French is just horrible.
super cute though.
Yeah,
even
like-
German, German I considered my mother language. Like you said that Slovak is more of your mother language, but for me, maybe because I was older when I lived in Germany. Like you left Germany when you were still kind of young, you know? I left Germany when I was 8-9 years old. So for me, the language was more engraved into my brain, and I guess it was more of my personality. So I consider German as my mother language probably for longer than you did, as you described before. And I still wouldn't say that Slovak is my mother language. I would say both. And it's funny though, because when I was on modeling trips the last few years, and I was trying to talk some German models, I had problems talking to them. Like I could speak German for a few sentences, and then a word would come up that I couldn't remember in German, and my brain would automatically switch to English, and then I would continue in English.
I think
that's happening to me right now with English.
Go.
Yeah, just like this is happening to me right now with English, that my English is getting worse and worse. Because I don't know, maybe I'm that's a fact, because I'm when I wasn't learning French, or I wasn't that interested in it, I was watching a lot of Survivor in English, and that helped me a lot. And so my English got better and better, but now when I'm concentrating on French maybe a bit more, then the English is kind of falling behind, and I'm thinking just like, okay, I can speak English, nothing will change, but no.
Everything changes once you stop.
That's the thing about languages, right? Like you can't take for granted that you know a language, or that you can speak a language. Like the biggest part of being fluent in a language is actually talking about, like, using the language as like in your everyday life, or you know, as much as possible. So if you don't use a certain language, you're gonna get like a little bit rusty over time. And like I've been feeling it with my French, which is my main language, because I speak mostly in English nowadays. So
really, with your French too?
Yeah, but actually also
because Michael is a native, for example, French speaker. Sorry, continue, Maxine.
I wanted to say that I think that it is easier to forget for me English than German, because German, at the end of the day, it's my second mother language. So it's kind of like I will never forget it in that kind of way how I'm forgetting English right now.
Because
still English isn't my mother language. It's just something that I taught not myself, but I was being taught and am still being taught. So yeah, that's true. Even though for me, because we moved to Germany when I was like 1.5 years old, 2 years old, so it's not like I spoke German from the beginning of my life, but I was still very young and very receiving of new informations and new receptive. Okay, yeah. I was still very receptive of new inputs and languages. It's scientifically proven that the younger you are, the easier it is for you to learn new languages. And I feel like they save, like your brain saves them better as other languages that you learn later in life. Yeah, so people teach your children 2 languages, at least.
Exactly. Teach your children, if you can, teach your children more languages.
100%.
Yeah, and an interesting thing is that our parents, they are both Slovak, and they have like a strong Slovak accent in German, but we don't have it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Even though they were speaking to us in that German with the Slovak accent, we learned it in the German way. I don't know how to describe it, but our German is way better than their.
Yeah, well, you guys were like immersed in being young as well. You know, you learn not only through your parents, but by practicing through school or friends, and since you were also like you got influenced by people that are like originated from Germany, or that had like a normal German accent. So when you learn a new language, you kind of take everything that's best around you. And I have a feeling you could probably hear your parents having an accent, and you didn't really want to mimic that part of their German.
So. Like you as a kid were probably comparing your parents, how they speak if they have an accent, to everybody else around you, and you kind of realize that, okay, this is probably the right way to speak when more people speak this way, I think.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to talk about, if it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
That that how our personalities change with the language.
Oh my god, honey, I have that. Honey.
Honey, yeah, I'm your honey.
Do I need to get
both
jealous now?
You are both my honey.
Jealous now, Michael?
Yeah, I also have a third question here. I have 3 questions prepared. If you also have a French persona already, like you have different personalities. Yeah, you have different personalities according to the languages you speak. Most people experience this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, like, you are not learning, you haven't been learning French for that long. So I was wondering if you already developed a French personality.
No, I don't think so, because I'm not speaking French so much.
Yeah,
And
that's what I thought.
It shows mostly, it shows mostly when I'm speaking. For example, when I'm speaking German, I have a really like a deep voice, and I don't know, I'm more like a male.
Maxi's alpha German.
You're a tomboy. You're a tomboy in German.
But when I'm speaking Slovak, I have like a more higher voice, like high pitched, and I also have a different personality. And when I speak English, I have like a middle voice.
No, you're sassy when you speak English.
Okay, how would you describe your 3 personalities? Let's take German, English, and Slovak. Let's forget about Czech. For all the people that are not Slovak, people listening here, most people in Slovakia know, like, understand and speak Czech as well. More understand that they actually speak, but we understand the Czech language. It's very similar. But I realized that it's not as similar. We were just growing up with it.
Not similar.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I thought for years that it's super similar, and that's what most Slovak people think. And I was kind of ashamed of saying that I also speak Czech, or like, when somebody was asking me how many languages do you speak, I would never say that I also speak Czech. But since I
also always 4, not 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I never include the Czech one, but yeah, you should include it.
Yeah. And since I started traveling, I realized that, oh my god, yeah, it's true. Like the Czech language, it is similar because it's a Slavic language, but it's not the same. Like there are big differences in the language. And I started noticing that also with our cousin, Amalia, who is not growing up surrounded by Czech people or growing up with Czech media, and she doesn't understand Czech.
Yeah. You remember this Christmas holiday?
Yeah.
When we were watching Cinderella?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Aschenbrödel?
Aschenputtel? Aschenbrödel? Oh,
Aschenbrödel, I think. I don't know how it's called originally.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's German, or it's like a German and Czech movie.
Yeah, it's you, like, for the people listening from Canada or from the States, you probably, when you watch Christmas movie, you watch Home Alone, and in Slovakia and also in Germany and in Czech Republic, we watch a version of Cinderella that's called Popoluška or Popelka, and Aschenbrödel or Aschenputtel in German. And it's a German-Czech collaboration, and that's our Christmas movie.
Yeah, so, and it is, we're always watching it in Czech. We wanted to show it to Amalia, our little cousin, and she can speak Flemish and Slovak, so, but her Slovak is a bit worse, but it's like, okay.
Just for information, Amalia, our cousin, is growing up in Belgium. She's growing up bilingual, but she's learning more Flemish than she's learning Slovak.
Yeah, and so we were watching it in Czech, and she was telling us that she couldn't understand, and we were completely like shocked that how can you not understand? Like it's Czech, and it's
like what?
Yeah, like what? And she wanted us to put I think English subtitles that she could understand. So like her English is better than her Czech.
But she speaks Slovak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting because how old is she now? 8 or something like that?
Wait, she's 10 years younger. Yeah, 8.
Yeah, so at 8 years old, she has better English than she understands Czech, even though she understands Slovak, and both are Slavic languages. So that shows how different Czech is. And since that, plus since I started traveling and comparing it to other languages, I decided that from now on, I will include Czech when people ask me how many languages do you speak.
Yeah.
Also, for anyone listening that is not from Europe or lives in North America, know how here in North America, like when you're bilingual, when you speak to a language, it's considered like good. In Europe, there's a big difference.
wow.
Like the norm in Europe is pretty much minimum 2 languages, and then it goes up from there. So, for example,
Yeah.
like these 2 ladies over here, they speak like 5 languages, and they're learning new languages still. So, yeah, there's definitely a big difference in terms of known languages between Europe and North America. But that probably has something to do with cultural proximity.
Yeah, and also it has something to do with country sizes and kind of like the significance of your country. Not that Slovakia is insignificant, but it's just that your country is small, and if you have a small country like Slovakia that has 5 million inhabitants, and only those 5 million inhabitants speak Slovak, and maybe some like 1 or 2 people in other countries, I don't know, just like few immigrants from Slovakia and other countries, that kind of forces you to learn other languages to be able to find your way in the world.
No, it's said beautifully, baby.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And close curtain and scene. Okay, Maximi, do you have anything else you would like to share in this podcast with us?
Maybe something, I don't know if it's that interesting, but I think you can relate that if someone is speaking German, that he's immediately so likable for us.
That's true.
Like, I don't know. It's stupid, but it's like, if someone speaks German, I'm like, be my friend.
Yeah, if somebody like, oh, talk to me, baby, talk to me German, please.
Shit, I need to learn
Yeah,
German.
but I don't know, but really, but if I hear someone speaking German, he's so likable. Like,
Not just
I don't
likable,
know how to
Maximi, but
describe
he's hot. If it's a guy, he's hot.
yeah, it's also hot, but
even in
You just
girls,
want to
like I
have a
find
bunch
it
of
hot
German
on
people
girls
as
too.
friends.
And I'm heterosexual, so
big surprise, Michael.
What? Baby.
But that's so true. When somebody starts speaking German, I'm like, oh, do you want to be my friend? Come on. Yes, no, maybe. Check the box.
But this probably
Yeah.
has something to do with
Yeah.
like positive associations. Like I think you both had a pretty good experience in Germany when you were
Amazing.
younger, and now when you meet someone that speaks German while outside of a country that usually speaks German, you kind of have this quick association or that quick nostalgia, good feeling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I think most people have that with different languages.
Oh, and Natalie, do you have like the same feeling as I do? Like when somebody's telling something bad about Germany that you feel so attacked?
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, she does.
I feel so attacked.
I can concur on that.
I have to protect Germany. Like when somebody's telling something bad about Slovakia, I just also start telling some shit about Slovakia, and it's fun. Like in Slovakia, it's normal to say some shit about Slovakia, and I kind of like it that we are making fun of our country.
Yeah, that's a big thing. There's a big thing about Slovak people living in Slovakia, that you kind of like your country, but you also don't like a lot of things about your country. And I think most Slovaks will probably agree on this, that you kind of joke around about your country and you constantly talk about it with other people, like, oh, Slovakia is so shitty, like, oh, shitty Slovakia, like, we live.
Yeah, but I like that humor. But if
Yeah, me too.
if someone tells me that, oh, we went through Germany and I don't know, we were stuck in traffic jam and stupid Germany, I'm so hurt. Like stop talking some bad shit about my country. No.
Okay, thank you, Maximi. Thank you for joining us, and maybe we can talk soon again.
Bye.
Yeah, this was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, thank you, Max.
Yeah, thank you. And wow, I mean, pretty interesting insights. I kind of expected to have a 5 minutes interview, and then she started saying a lot of very interesting things.
So we ended up taking a bit more time, but that's okay. That's all good.
Yeah, there's a little bit like all of our Skype calls. Every time we talk with my sister through a video call, it's always like, oh yeah, we're just gonna call for like 5 minutes, 10
Yeah,
max, and
never.
then we end up speaking for 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah, I think that's also the story of this podcast. We're always like, we're gonna try to make it around an hour, and then never happens.
Yeah, we should try to make it shorter though. I'm really trying to condense everything, but yeah,
it's not working.
I feel like we just have a lot of thoughts on everything.
That's good. I guess it's a good thing when you're running a podcast.
Yeah, so there are 2 things Max wanted me to add that we kind of like, once we finished recording the part for the podcast, we continued calling for another 2 hours. And she was saying that there are 2 things she would like to mention. So in behalf of my sister, she was also saying when you speak 2 languages or more languages, as a child usually, like maybe also when you're older, I don't know, but children that grow up bilingual, trilingual, etc., they will merge words into one. So take one word from one language, take another word from another language, and merge it together.
Really?
So my sister gave the example of socks.
Yeah.
Socks in German are Socken.
Socken?
And in Slovak it's ponožky.
Sockenski.
No. Yeah, okay, almost. And we merged it into ponožken.
Ponožken, okay. You did the inverse. You did the reverse.
You did the inverted. Yeah. But yeah.
Okay.
So we would always say ponožken, like, oh, where are my ponožken?
Your parents would have been looking at you like, what the fuck is she talking about?
It's so funny. I love to watch this old family videos. Oh, that's the best.
Right.
And then there are words that we still up until this day just use in one language. We don't translate those words. Even though they have a translation in the other language that we use, we just kind of like always use this word in this language and we continue.
Yeah.
So gummy bears, we always use the German word. We always say Gummibärchen.
Okay.
We always say that, like, or Gummimi. That's like a short version we used as children.
And I feel like you have specific words that you always like use that is not like we talk in English, me and Natalia. Like we could speak in French, but that like she's not as fluent in French as she is in English. So like most of the time
I actually have a higher degree in French than I have in English. Like my graduation in French is C1, which is the second highest you can have, and in English it's B2.
Okay.
But I would not say that my French is C1 anymore. Like no.
Anyway, so we speak in English, right? And sometimes she's just gonna be talking about something, and then she's gonna drop a German word in the sentence, and I'm like, what? She's like, oh yeah, that's what the word I use for Kleenex is, for example. And it's like, okay.
And then there's something that I kind of talked about with my sister also, that when I was preparing for this podcast and kind of like putting my thoughts together, what I would like to talk about, etc., because, you know, this podcast is mostly run by me. I mean, yeah, Michael is also doing his thing.
She does the hard work.
Yeah, I'm the one who edits it. I'm the one who comes up with the ideas for the episodes, and
I just talk a bunch of nonsense on here.
Yeah, it's sometimes like, okay, I just tell Michael, okay, like do a little bit of research on this, or when you have something interesting about this topic. But yeah, it's usually me who kind of like deals with the organization of the podcast.
Yes.
And I was sitting behind my desk and just kind of like putting my thoughts together. And then I realized that, oh wow, I speak 5 languages. It's like having 5 dictionaries in your brain.
Yeah, that was confusing.
It's not just confusing, but when you that makes you realize how much fits in your brain. Like, wow.
Of course. Our brains are fucking amazing.
And I told that to Max.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh yeah, like when I'm learning biology, I often feel like, I already have that space occupied by languages. So next time I should go to my biology teacher and just say that, oh yeah, sorry, I had trouble like remembering this. You know, I have already German in my brain. Like German already occupies that space. Like, oh yeah, sorry, biology, you know, this seat is taken.
Hard drive is full.
Which is funny because that's not at all how brain works. No. It's actually the opposite. Like the more you learn, the more are you able to learn. Like, because your brain can build infinite connections, and thoughts and like memory is formed through connections between your brain cells. And it's kind of like the more connections you make, the more new connections you can make, because you already have a bigger number of connections. So from that bigger number, you can connect even more, and etc. So actually, the more you learn, the easier it is to learn even more.
Yep. So
it was more of a thing that she just doesn't like biology.
That's actually a really interesting bridge that we can make with the final topic of our podcast. if knowing multiple languages like this creates more connection in your brain, does knowing more languages or being bilingual makes you smarter?
Yeah, does bilingualism or multilingualism make us smarter? And maybe you have already seen a lot of headlines in magazines recently being like, oh yeah, teach your kid a second language and it will excel at school, it will have straight A's and it will be super smart. And that's not really how that works.
Not quite. It is true though that bilingualism has been linked with higher gray matter density, better problem solving skills, multitasking, decision making, and also has positive effect on plenty of things. For example, the development of dementia.
And there's one more thing, that your brain kind of gets better at filtering out irrelevant information.
Irrelevant?
Irrelevant?
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant information.
Oh, wow. The thing is, though, with this, that, okay, it's not completely wrong, but these things that with the gray matter, like there's a higher gray matter density, etc., that means you have more neurons, more connections. But the question usually is that, okay, if you have a bigger brain, does that make you smarter? And that doesn't have to be necessarily the case. You know, like whales have huge brains, but we humans are smarter than a whale.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on how your brain is actually trained and evolves.
Yeah, and so there have been a lot of studies that were trying to really like answer this question, if it actually makes you smarter. And they had different fuck, there's something in my mouth, sorry. Oh wow, a hair. Oh wow, the benefits of long hair. I need to cut my hair, Jesus.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so these studies, they had kind of like contradicting results. So it's a 50-50 or 60-40 or something. There's not really a scientific consensus that yes, bilingualism or multilingualism makes you smarter. But that the reason why you see so many headlines and so many magazines writing about, yeah, bilingualism makes you smarter, blah, blah, it's because there is something called a publication bias, which means that obviously people are more interested into reading those studies, those results of the studies that say that it makes you smarter than the results that just doesn't say anything, and then they say that, oh yeah, we can't tell this with some certainty.
That makes sense. That's boring, right?
Yeah, because that's boring. Nobody would read that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then there's also a problem in the science community where there is a scientific bias, where most of these studies are done as retrospective studies, so people kind of like remembering, and it's all about like people, if they feel like it made them smarter, if they feel like, like there are some things, yes, they also measure brain waves, etc., like those things, or not brain waves, but they like look at the brain. Yeah. But yeah, those are the things that we already said with the gray matter and with the connections, etc. Like those things are proven, but the objective question of does it make us smarter cannot be really answered yet.
No, studying the brain and studying how intelligence works, it's something that's really difficult because there is no one definition of what smart is. Like someone can be smart in a different way than another person. You have qualities, you have talents, and as much as you can try to define it through tests like IQ tests and everything, you're always going to be testing things that are very specific. Person might excel in where someone else might not excel in. So what you're testing is basically variables that you choose, which is your own definition or a specific definition of what intelligence or being smart is, which is not always a representation of a reality. It might be a representation of a certain reality, but it's not necessarily a representation of a reality of someone else, you know? So it's something that's not absolutely clear what you're even defining with this.
Yeah, sure.
But even though we can't move forward with like arguments regarding this because we don't have anywhere to go with the smart thing, because you can't really define it.
Like what is smart? Even?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be smart?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and because there's terms like street smart, which means people that are good like at haggling, they know their way around city. But these people might not be academically smart, whereas someone might spend his life in the library, but you put him in the street and they know what to do, you know?
Yeah, just the definition of smart is already really difficult. But we can ask ourselves the question if language shapes the way we think.
Exactly.
That is something we can answer. And that is something we have already like various proof of how language or different languages shape the way we think.
Yeah.
There's around 7,000 languages in our world.
That's a lot.
Yeah, like every day it's getting less and less because the world is becoming more globally connected and a lot of languages die out. But yes, like it's still around like that number, which is a lot of languages. And a language is also a reflection of the culture.
Yeah, language is definitely something very cultural.
And with this, I would really like to mention a book that's called 1984 by George Orwell. And it's a book about a dystopian future where the totalitarian regime in power invents a new language or changes the language that people were speaking from the old language they call Old Speak, and then they have a new language that's New Speak.
Yeah.
That's exactly how they call it. No, that's seriously, it's a dumb name, but that's how they call it.
Okay. And everyone speaks the same language, I assume.
Yeah. It's like within one country, or you speak the same language.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I think the language is supposed to be English. Like Old Speak is English as we know it, and New Speak is the transformed English
version of. Okay.
Yeah. So in this language, the regime, the totalitarian regime, the people in power, they forbid words to be used. So I don't know, things like all the words that could question the regime, that could go against the regime. So like, for example, there isn't a word for rebellion. So the word rebellion doesn't exist. Or I don't know, politically wrong or whatever.
Yeah, like, words of defiance.
Exactly. But they also limit the vocabulary of people. So there's less words you can use to communicate. And they do it because they believe that the less words you use, the less you can think. Or the less complex thoughts you can make.
Yeah.
And less complex thoughts would lead to less rebellion in the logic of the government.
That's crazy to think about that. Like everything that you think is restricted by the constructs that you can imagine. Yeah. So if there's no words, if there's no conceptualization for certain things, can you come up with them? Can you think them?
Yeah, like for example, if there's no word for soul, would we even think that there is something as a soul? Or would we even believe in souls if we don't have a word for it?
Someone would have to come up with it.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's something that there's also multiple research going on, like different directions. Like obviously it's not as easy as in the book, but it asks a very important question and a very interesting one. And also like, it's not just like limiting the vocabulary in the new language, but they also kind of like limit the alternations of the word.
Yeah.
So for example, you will have the word pretty or warm, and you used to have the word pretty or warm, but those words don't exist anymore.
Okay.
And you only use ugly, or you only use cold. And if you want to say pretty, you say unugly or non-ugly. And if you want to say warm, you say uncold.
Okay.
Which kind of like in your brain, because when you say warm, you imagine something completely else than if you say cold.
Yeah.
But if you say just cold and uncold, it's kind of like the similar thing.
It's not warm, it's just not cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like picture different things.
And this might seem very far-fetched or very far away, but even in our world today, you can see it. We had the discussion right before we started the podcast, but in German, in different language there's different genre, like in genders. Sorry.
Genders, yeah.
Yeah. In French we have like feminine and masculine.
There's usually in Slovak we have the feminine gender, the masculine gender,
and neutral, right?
the it gender.
In English there's no specific genders, but we had this discussion because in German there's also genders, and we were talking about the moon, for example, whereas in French, la lune, it's a feminine word, and in German it's quite the opposite. What's the word for the moon?
Mond.
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 Mond. Okay, I can't.
Okay, both in German and in Slovak it's a masculine.
Yeah.
It's Mond and Mesiac.
Exactly. And in French, it's a feminine thing. So for me, for example, when I picture the moon, I picture something that's more feminine, that's more delicate, that's more beautiful.
Because not that men are not all those things, but things that you would stereotypically associate with a gender.
Exactly. And Natalia, for example, sees the moon quite differently because of those perceptive stereotypes bias that are very attached or connected to genders.
And for me, when I started learning French, then I really liked, I always loved the word la lune. I always loved the word, I don't know. So when I started learning French, this idea of the moon being something masculine changed into something feminine. But that's because I liked it more.
Yeah.
For some reason. But the sun, for example, the sun in German and also in Slovak. Oh, sorry, no. In Slovak, the sun is an it. But okay, in German, the sun is feminine. And in English, it's the sun, like a masculine sun.
There's no gender in English.
Or, wait.
It's in French. Le soleil.
Oh, fuck, you're right. But, okay. But also, when somebody says the sun, I picture something masculine.
Okay. It's possible that you can associate a specific gender even if there's no technical gender in the language.
Yeah, because the just sounds masculine to me, I guess.
There is an it.
I know it's an it, but it sounds masculine to me.
Maybe because
but
you have predetermined concept of specific construct. I don't know.
No, but anyway, in German, when somebody says die Sonne, then I'm just like, it's a beautiful woman in the sky. Like a power, the sun, for me, it's like the powerful lady that that gives us heat.
and even deeper than that, there's an author that I really like. He's called Paul Ekman. For those of you who watch the TV series Lie to Me, he's kind of the main character of the series Lie to Me is a personification of this author. Paul Ekman is a researcher, a psychologist that went around the world and studied the way people perceived and demonstrated emotions. And his goal was to try to find universal emotions or universal, physical representation of emotions.
That everybody feels, that everybody describes and stuff.
Yeah, just to try and see if emotions were cultural or if emotions were universal.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And what he found is that there is some emotions that are universal. So, for example, fear. Fear is something that anybody can perceive. But then there's some emotions that are very culture specific. For example, I believe disgust is something that is seen in North America. Like it's something that's very like Occidental as
or Europe too.
Yeah, as a kind of an emotions. But this emotion specifically is not seen in certain tribes or in certain like underdeveloped civilization, for example. And that brings a really interesting questions, even when it comes to language, is because technically emotions and gesture is another form of language.
Yeah.
Like we didn't really touch on that during this podcast, but
yeah, we didn't. But yes, sure. Like there's sign language. There's generally mimics and gesture. It's a different form of language, and
it brings that really interesting question, and maybe we can leave it in the air to end the podcast on that. But like it brings this really interesting question. Whereas if certain words or certain concepts don't exist in your specific language and your specific culture, then how much does it affect your interactions with others? If you only have a certain set of emotions that you show or that you can exert, like those emotions that you can't show, like they don't exist for you. And that's something that's really fascinating because it's not only that it limits the way you can interact with other people, but it completely changes it because the range of the spectrum is either more limited or it's like more or less limited.
Yeah.
And
so
for me, my thoughts on it is they might sound a bit hectic right now. And
Michael is like, I look at him and his eyes are sparkling and he's just like, oh my god, I'm just this child so interested in everything and wow.
Hopefully I was able to like communicate it a little bit through this.
I hope you understood what Michael was saying. I mean, I understood what he was saying, but to sum up, different languages and differences in languages affect also our emotions, or it's a connected thing. So the language affects the emotions might affect the language.
So if that interests you, definitely do more research on it because languages don't only affect emotions, don't only affect your concepts. Like it affects colors, it's affecting the way people see time. It's amazing the influence that it has.
Languages are so fascinating. When I was in school and I would have to learn a different language, like with French, I kind of had this love-hate relationship. But most people, when they are in school and learning a different language, they are like, this new language is so annoying, blah blah. But when you look into it, then like languages are actually super fascinating.
At the end of the day, it opens you up to so much possibilities, and
it does.
Not just information or just new words or new people, but a new way of seeing the world world around you.
Exactly.
And
It
that's
gives you...
so beautiful.
Yeah, languages make you, like, learning different languages make you see the world in different ways.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah,
for
I
the
think
end.
I think that's a beautiful thought to end this podcast
Yeah.
on.
So it really is one brain and multiple personalities, or better said, multiple ways of experiencing the world around us. We just both made a head movement of like la 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 la. So yeah, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you found it interesting. If you're listening on iTunes, then we would really appreciate if you would give us a rating, because you know those things boost the algorithm. If you are watching this on my YouTube channel, then I would thumbs up, or like if you really didn't like the podcast, thumbs down, okay, but and leave us a comment. We love
We
reading
love
comments.
construction comments.
Yeah, if you
Constructive comments.
yeah, we really would love to get some comments from you. And if you're listening to Spotify, then yeah, give us a follow if you like this podcast, and share this podcast with your friends, family, and just everybody you would like to listen to it.
Because so far we've it's been great, so I think we're gonna keep going with this.
Yeah, it's a really fun time. See you soon.
Thank
Bye.
you. Ciao.